week 10 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few plays I look to sell and trade this week. The first player, Jackson Smith-Njigba of the Seattle Seahawks. So Smith-Njigba, it's been an up and down second season for him in the NFL, but he's coming off a monster ball game, and especially with DK Metcalf out, he's definitely someone I'm going to sell high, coming off 7-catch, 180-yard, 2-touchdown performance on 13 targets. So he had a monster ball game, obviously, versus the Los Angeles Rams. But like I said, DK Metcalf returning to the lineup. A lot of big plays in the middle of the field, open for him like they were. And week 11 after the bye week as well, a tough matchup with San Francisco. So like I said, JSN, he's been up and down all season long. It was obviously great to see him have the big breakout performance. But like I said, with DK Metcalf and Noah Fant most likely returning after the bye week, those numbers are going to drop off and the target's going to drop off. So after a big performance like that and going on bye, he's a sell-high candidate this week is JSN, because like I said, with Metcalf out of the lineup, obviously a lot of targets you're going to get, and he's not going to put up performances like that with the best game of his NFL career. The next play I look to sell and trade, Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos. So Courtland Sutton, he's been a solid wide receiver over the last couple seasons, but he's coming off his biggest game of the year as well. In the last couple weeks, he's had some big games. Week 8 versus the Panthers, he went out there, 8 catches, 100 yards, 28 pass yards on 11 targets. And then week 9 at Baltimore, passing 2-yard touchdown, 7 catches, 122 yards in that ball game on 10 targets. So the target share has definitely been there for Courtland Sutton. They're more comfortable with Bo Nix throwing the football over the last couple weeks, even though they were trailing early and often. They got blown out by 31 points at the Baltimore Ravens, where they had no choice but to throw the football. So we know this Bronco team, they're all about running the football and playing good defense. So with 2 big games in a row for Courtland Sutton, and he's thrown for 30 yards in the last 2 games as well. He's a sell-high candidate. A tough matchup coming up in week 10 at Kansas City, and I don't expect them to go out there weekly and score over 15 fantasy points, and especially 2 100-yard games in a row as well for Courtland Sutton. He's definitely someone that I don't see keeping up these numbers, and he's a sell-high candidate this week. The next sell-high, Jacoby Myers of the Vegas Raiders. So I know he's the number 1 receiver now in the lineup is Jacoby Myers. Obviously, with Davante Adams traded away weeks ago to the New York Jets. And Myers, the last 2 games, he's gone out there as well, and he's had big performances. Week 8 versus the Chiefs, 6 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. In week 9, it's Cincinnati, 8 catches, 105 yards on 11 targets. So we know this Raider team, they're going to be trailing early and often all season long. These ball games, they've had a bad year, 2-7 on the season. Week 10, they have a bye week. And like I said, there's times Jacoby Myers disappears, and then there's times he has big ball games. Well, like I said, going on bye week, and this offense is inconsistent all season long. I know it's a lot of garbage time he's getting this year. I still believe Jacoby Myers is someone you can count on week in and week out. So like I said, with injuries on and off the season, and then coming off 2 games over 15 fantasy points in PPR leagues, I think he's definitely a sell-high candidate this week. The next player I look to sell and trade, Rome Odunze of the Chicago Bears. So Rome Odunze, it hasn't been a great rookie season for him, and he's just coming off a 100-yard performance is Odunze, and he's definitely a sell-high candidate. There's a lot of mouths to feed, obviously, over there for the Chicago Bears, and it's the only second game of the year with double-digit fantasy points for Rome Odunze. So I know week 10, it's a good matchup versus the New England Patriots, but like I said, he's failed to reach double digits besides week 3 at Indianapolis, where he went for 6 for 112 and a touchdown. And then week 9, like I said, at the Arizona Cardinals, 5 catches, 104 yards. So Rome Odunze, he was a top pick in the NFL draft, going in the top 10 with the Chicago Bear team. But Caleb Williams, I just don't think he's been that great so far in his rookie season this year. A lot of inconsistencies. I know he had couple big games in week 5 versus Carolina and week 6 versus the Jaguars, but ever since the bye week ended and on 2 games on the road, he hasn't done much. Odunze, obviously there's going to be growing pains, but I just believe he's been inconsistent as well in this offense, and he's not going to be someone week in and week out to put numbers. The next sells Rhamondre Stevenson, the New England Patriots. Or Rhamondre Stevenson, 2 weeks in a row, he's gone out there and had big performances, over 20 fantasy points in PPR leagues. Week 8 versus the Jets, tough matchup, 20 carries, 48 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 catches, 17 yards, a 2-point conversion. In week 9 at the Titans, he showed a lot in the receiving game. 5 catches, 38 yards, a touchdown receiving, and 10 carries, 16 yards, and a rushing touchdown. So Rhamondre Stevenson, he's been a solid back for the most part this season. 5 out of 9 games, double-digit fantasy points on the year for Stevenson. In week 10, not a great matchup in Chicago, but like I said, this offense, they're going to be trailing a lot as this Patriot team where they can't throw the football a whole lot. So obviously, Stevenson showed a lot in the passing game and receiving game for this New England Patriot team, but I'm not going to bank on it weekly. So after coming off of 2 good games and possibly his best games of the season, he's definitely a play I look to sell high this week. The next sell is Chuba Hubbard, Carolina Panthers. So with Jonathan Brooks looming and possibly returning any week now for this Carolina Panther team, even though they're taking it slow with him, obviously. Chuba Hubbard, he's coming off another big game. I know the numbers went down from week 4 way to week 8. His numbers dropped every game, but he came back with a nice one in week 9 versus Saints. 15 carries, 72 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So like I said, Jonathan Brooks, I'm believing he's going to return in week 12. Week 10, they got a good matchup versus the Giants. Then the bye in week 11, and I think we'll see Brooks most likely week 10 or week 12 for this Carolina Panther team. So Chuba Hubbard, he's been solid this season, no doubt about it. But Jonathan Brooks, they took him in the second round of the NFL draft. Did 2-7 on the season of this Carolina Panther team. And I don't think we're going to see Jonathan Brooks sit on the bench much, where this past week could be a 60-40 split or a 50-50 split. So Chuba Hubbard, now definitely a good sell piece, coming off a 2 touchdown performance and over 20 PPR fantasy points. And the final player look to sell and trade is Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. So Geno's coming off a big game in a tough loss in overtime versus the Los Angeles Rams. And that was without DK Metcalf, where Jackson Smith-Njigba went off for a monster performance, 7 for 180 and 2 touchdowns. So Geno Smith, the last couple outings, week 7 at Atlanta, 207 pass yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 8 versus Buffalo, 212 passing and then throw, 16 rush yards. In week 9, the monster game, 363 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So Geno Smith going on bye week. And I know he's amongst the league leaders in passing yards, and he's going to get DK Metcalf back. But it's a tough matchup to come back at San Francisco, and pretty much the next 2 weeks, he's not going to be usable for fantasy owners, in my opinion. So right now, coming off a monster performance versus the Rams, he's definitely a player I look to sell high this week, Smith. So that's a few plays I look to sell and trade for week 10 of the fantasy football season.